So as we're continuing the themes that you've brought in Lent, hope in desperate situations, right, is the theme we're looking at. And it so happens that we've got a desperate situation in our readings. Both, but especially the first reading from Joseph. Right? Joseph and his brothers try to kill him. They don't like him. Their hatred against him. They won't even greet him. Right? I don't know if you felt that before. I've gotten that before. They won't even greet him. And so, do you think that situation was desperate? Here he is thrown in a cistern where it says, I think, dark and empty. Dark and empty was where he was. And you think about the hatred the brothers had for him. I mean, what a sad situation. And so when we're looking at, desperate situations in our own lives, we have to be honest about what's happening. We can't just fluff it away. Right? I mean, it was a pretty serious situation that was going on with Joseph. Think about what he felt. He was betrayed by his own family. He was left to die and then sold into slavery as his brothers sat down to a meal. Pretty serious situation for Joseph. Maybe you can think about what he was experiencing in his heart during all this, right? And sometimes that might help us in our situations when we experience things, right? The betrayal he would have experienced, the aloneness he would have experienced. The lack of being with his family, his father, and the good things that seemed to be happening in his life, right? The dreamer. Seemed like that was being taken away from him. But in the end, it wasn't. And in the end, God brings a greater purpose, right? And so that's part of the message today. We have to look at the seriousness of the situation. We can't just fluff it away. But in that, to trust in the Lord, because we know the story about Joseph. He's a friend of leaders, of nations in the end. God raises him up, and God uses him for a way greater purpose. Who could have thought? Who could have planned that? And of course, he meets his brothers later and is able to forgive. So trust is the point here. Trust not just in myself or in people around me, but trust in God. Now, we should trust others. That's part of being childlike. But God is deserving of our trust so much. And sometimes we just try to grasp it ourselves and do it ourselves. And here he had this great plan with Joseph. Right? Remember the marvels the Lord has done. Right? That's the psalm that we recited today. He sent a man before them, Joseph, sold as a slave. Right? Joseph became a great leader. And so when God allows situations in our life that are difficult, that are desperate, it molds us in a way that other situations can't. It makes us really be honest about our hearts. Myself, I've been in desperate situations before. Now, really, nothing's really desperate because we know God is over all things. But we have to be honest about the situation. And so in my own life, I've experienced multiple sicknesses that were not very fun. And there was a lot of crosses in them. And I can remember thinking at different times, Lord, am I going to die from this? It was pretty serious. And so I had to take a serious account of what was going on. But I went to the Lord with it, and I think initially he's like, no, you're not going to die from this. I was like, okay, I guess. But, in those situations, there's crosses in our life. There was a cross of not knowing how I was going to get better, not having a solution. There was a physical cross. There was a mental cross of being misunderstood at times. And it got to a point where I had to trust in Jesus. There was no other option. I couldn't solve it myself. It was too big for me. I had to put everything I had into him and say, Lord, you got to help me. Lord, first it was a resignation to his will. Lord, I know you're good. I know you have plans here. I trust you. I trust what will come of this. If I'm to die, I have to be resigned to die. I have to be resigned to give my life to him. That's what we read not too long ago in the readings during the daily Mass. St. Paul says, brothers and sisters, I consider everything as a loss because of the supreme good of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake I have accepted the loss of all things, and I consider them so much rubbish. How did he get to that place of surrender? How did he get to that awesomeness? Right? Well, he went through trials himself. Look at all the trials St. Paul went through. And he was able to say, Lord, your will be done. This world is temporary. Your will is eternal. And so as we go through our own crosses, to talk to the Lord about them, he wants to hear. He's not going to be deaf to our petitions and our pleas. That helps us to keep going, keep persevering. Sometimes the Lord leads us by crumbs, right, where we have to trust the next crumb that's coming. We have to trust the next step that's going to come eventually that we don't see yet. And so, trust has been a theme in some of the readings recently, too, in the daily Mass readings. I think it was yesterday that said, cursed is the man who trusts only in human beings. Right? That's not to say you shouldn't trust people, right? To be childlike and to trust is good. But if you're only getting your counsel from humans, it's interesting what that reading said. It said, he enjoys no change of seasons, the person who does that. Why? Because they have everything planned out already. They can't be surprised by God. They're trusting too much in their limited knowledge. With God, he's new. We can enjoy a change. We can enjoy newness. We can enjoy freshness. We can enjoy youthful vigor with him, no matter what age we are. There's another private revelation I follow. And the visionary, Jesus said this to the visionary, you think trust is a little thing. I tell you, it is everything. Why? Because if you love God, you trust him. You trust his goodness. You've seen his goodness. He's worthy of your trust. And so, when we trust him even just a little bit, it goes a long way. And who knows how much reward we get from those acts of trust, even in situations especially in situations where we just don't have any answers. I tell you, it is everything. trust. So today, there's good reasons to trust the Lord. And in Jesus' own life, in the gospel, the stone that the builders rejected, what happened to it? Became the cornerstone. Became the foundation of everything. By the work of the Lord has this been done. So we trust him today and in every situation in our lives.